All right, and welcome everyone. My name is Nicole Drumhiller. I am the Associate Dean for the School of Security and Global Studies with American Public University System. With me today is Kelvin Coleman, who serves as the Federal Aviation Administration's Deputy Associate Administrator for Commercial Space Transportation. Kelvin has more than 20 years of experience in AST, having served previously as Acting Deputy Associate Administrator, Chief of Staff, Senior Technical Advisor for Operations Integration, Program Lead for Space and Air Traffic Integration, and Special Assistant to the Associate Administrator. Prior to joining AST, he worked for the U.S. Naval Air Systems Command as both a systems engineer and as a guidance, navigation, and control engineer for several weapon system acquisition programs. And I apologize in advance, Kelvin. I know I called you Kevin at first. My brother's name is Kevin. They're very close together, so I apologize in advance.
No worries at all.
So welcome and thank you for joining us. As part of this discussion, I know we're interested in learning more about especially the timeliness, but of course the relevancy of diversity in space and STEM careers. And so can you tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to the FAA?
Sure thing. Well, first of all, hey, Nicole, thank you for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and talk with you and your audience here. As you pointed out, I've been with the Office of Commercial Space Transportation in a number of different capacities now over the course of about a 25-year career. And prior to that, I spent 7 years working for the U.S. Department of Navy, as you mentioned, in various weapons programs. It's been a great run for me. I grew up in a small town in Central Virginia called Petersburg, Virginia. I went to Petersburg High School and was interested in engineering and math at the time, and went to school at George Mason University, where I got a bachelor's degree in electronics and computer engineering, and also got an MBA from Marymount University, which kind of led me to some of the policy work that I later got more interested in the latter part of my career. It was really, I can't say I had a really clean, charted out course to get to the FAA. I had worked in a place that I was really happy with for a number of years, working for the Department of Navy Naval Air Systems Command, and the Department of Navy decided they wanted to move its location from Crystal City, Virginia, Arlington, Virginia, to Patuxent River, Maryland, and I decided I didn't want to make that move. And I started looking for different opportunities, and a friend of mine who happened to work for the FAA told me, "Well, hey, we got a new rocket offer, so something involved with space, and sounds like something that you're doing right now. And if you're looking for opportunities, this may be a place for you." So I looked into it, and that was 25 years ago, and 25 years later, here we are. It was really through an opportunity that came to me through some good fortune of some friends of mine who saw an opportunity that might be a good fit for me, and they made me aware of it, and I pursued it, and here I am.
Wonderful. And so I'm curious to learn a little bit more about your background in engineering. Is that something that you knew that you always wanted to be when you grow up, or how did that kind of cultivate as you kind of started to develop and figure out what you wanted to do as you got older?
Yeah, sure. I can't honestly say I always wanted to be an engineer. I knew early on I wanted to be something substantial. I didn't know if it would be an engineer, an architect, just didn't know what it was. I mean, engineer and architect seemed to be the two things that always stayed in my mind. I had friends, I had one friend of mine, his name's Michael Yates, third grade, he wanted to be a police officer, and he always knew it, and that wasn't me. I didn't always know I wanted to be an engineer, but I think, as I mentioned, over the course of my studies, I was pretty good in math, and in college, I was good in math again, and continued to be, pretty decent in those studies, and engineering seemed to be something that I could do and could do well in, and so I pursued it, it's turned out well for me. But I can't honestly say I always wanted to be an engineer, but just taking advantage of, my God-given capabilities and talents, if you will, and having some abilities in math sort of led me down this path.
Wonderful. And what about space? Is that something that you were ever interested as a kid growing up, or did that just happen because there was a job available and you said, hey, why not? Let's see what happens.
Yeah, sure. Well, listen, I was pretty young, but I do remember seeing on the grainy black and white television the Apollo mission, and it was fascinating to see. I think space has always been fascinating to anybody who kind of has a chance to kind of see it unfold. I always was interested in the shuttle missions. Early in my, I was in school, we would always sit in the student union and watch the shuttle missions. And I remember exactly where I was when Challenger happened. I was sitting in George Mason's student union with a bunch of other students watching, and we all were just shocked and amazed to see what was unfolding. So it's always been something I've had an interest in. Now, in those early days, I didn't know I'd wind up in space. I had no idea that. And as I just mentioned to you, I sort of wound up in the Office of Commercial Space Transportation, and sort of by happenstance, if you will. It was sort of a lucky opportunity that came to me, but I'm really glad that it did. I really enjoyed it. But since I've been a part of it, I tell you, I've grown really to love space. It's really fascinating to be a part of it. It's really been great to be a part of commercial space transportation in particular. Now, space has been really the exclusive province of the government for many years, and we know that. But more recently, we've seen commercial space transportation really take off, no pun intended. And it's really been great to be a part of that over the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet it's definitely some exciting times. And for today's purpose, I know we're talking about diversity and inclusion in space and STEM careers. And so can you tell us a little bit about any challenges that you may have had to overcome within your career, or things that you found to be roadblocks for others?
Well, that's a good question. Listen, I think for any of us, who are getting into a career field, it's very important for us to have confidence in what we're doing. It's very important for us to be comfortable in what we're doing and be comfortable in our environments. I can't say I've had any particular roadblocks, but I've had challenges, obviously, in my career. One is, being an African American male, you don't see a lot of people who look like you in this particular sector, and that's one of the challenges I think you have to overcome in your own mind, if you will, is how do you get comfortable in that, and how do you build networks that you can lean on and in times of need and when you need help. And those were some of the things that I found challenging at times in the early part of my career. But fortunately for me, I had a great mentor when I started out, particularly in the Office of Commercial Space Transportation, and Patty Gray Smith, who was at the time, she was the Deputy Associate Administrator for Commercial Space Transportation. And Frank Weaver, I should also mention him. He was the director at the time. Patty Gray Smith is a Tuskegee graduate. Frank Weaver was a Howard University graduate. And, for the first time in my career coming into this particular office, I had an opportunity to work for an African-American man and an African-American woman. And that was pretty unique for me. And so, it was the great opportunity for me to contribute to their success. But what was most impactful for me was their contributions to my success. And so what they were able to do for me was help build bridges and help mentor me down a successful path early in my career, and give me opportunities that really were very helpful for me in getting my career off to a great start. But again, I think it's really important for anybody to have a good support group in the workplace, and good mentors that can be leaned on to help navigate the way.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that. And, in thinking about how space has been developing, and we're seeing so many different changes now, also within STEM, why do you believe DEI should be an important thing for us to focus on to help better cultivate the future of these areas?
Well, let's take a little step back and really take a look at really how important space is to our nation. I mean, space plays a very prominent role in our national security interests, plays a very prominent role in our economic interests. And when you look at, our national security and our economic interests, and being the United States of America, we're the great melting pot. We are a diverse society of people. And I think, the very best of our nation can be gleaned when we all have an opportunity to contribute, and when we leverage different backgrounds and different experiences. I think that really helps us achieve the best that our nation can achieve. And so when you look at how important space is to our nation, again, getting back to the national security piece and the economic piece, it's important that we have a diverse workforce and a diverse community, if you will, that's making contributions in space, considering how important it is to our nation and our nation's interest. And we've been seeing some progress. We're not quite where we want to be. I saw a recent piece by a friend of mine, Will Pomerantz, and he's one of the founders, if you will, of the Patty Grace Smith Fellowship. And he was commenting on LinkedIn more recently that, this community has not really made the strides that it needs to make. And there's still a lot of work to be done to get a more diverse community involved in space. And one of the things that's helping with that is the Patty Grace Smith Fellowship, which is really focused on helping minority students get opportunities in some of these space companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin and other places where they might otherwise not get those opportunities for this fellowship opportunity. So I really think, diversity and inclusion is really important in space transportation. Space is only going to get bigger, and it's only going to grow more. And so more people will have an interest in it, and it'll have a bigger impact on everyone's lives. So it's important for us all to have a hand in it, I believe.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thanks for those comments. And can you tell us what AST or the FAA is doing to promote diversity in space and STEM careers right now?
Sure, absolutely. Well, we're doing a lot. I mean, we're really focused on, and we're very conscious about as I mentioned, the importance of diversity in space and space transportation. And we're doing a number of outreach efforts to historically Black colleges and universities. There's about 11 historically Black colleges and universities that we're working with, getting involved with some of their programs they have on campus. We're getting involved in recruitment programs there. We're reaching out and trying to build pipelines where we can go and recruit from these institutions and bring them into our workforce and help them be a successful part of what we're doing in commercial space transportation. There's also within the agency, we have a minority serving institutions program, MSI program, where we're able to bring in interns from minority serving institutions. And we've been leveraging that over the course of last several years, and gotten a number of great interns to come and be a part of our program in AST. And what we try to do when they come in is really try to convince them that, hey, this might be a really great opportunity for you from a career standpoint. And so we try to give them great opportunities, give them real work when they're there, and give them great opportunities when they're there to convince them that commercial space and science and technology and math is the way to go. And that's been pretty successful for us. I also should mention that in FAA, we have something called the STEM AVSED strategy. AVSED is an acronym which stands for, well, STEM, we all know what STEM stands for. AVSED, ABSED, is Aviation and Space Education Strategy. And our focus there is really to reach out to underserved communities to make sure that those communities have opportunities to take part in what's taking place in the space and aviation communities. And so we've had a number of outreach efforts to those communities as well, and a number of institutions in those communities. We've been able to contact about 15,000 students thus far, almost 2/3 of them being minority students. And so that's worked very well for us. And then later this year, we're going to kick off something we call an Adopt a School program, where we're going to reach out to elementary schools and connect with those schools and help show what the great opportunities are for young kids to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and math. So we're really excited about that. And that's really working well for us so far.
Oh, that's fantastic. I always like to hear about those programs and workshops that, make integrating into the career field a little bit easier on people that are just a little bit hesitant to get started. So that's wonderful to hear that there's those things going on. Um, as we talked about, the commercial space industry that you're part of is really rapidly growing. Where do you see the future of space transportation going? And what does that mean for the future of STEM and space careers?
That's a great question. I got to tell you, it's funny. I remember and recall early in my career, there was a giggle factor about space and space, particularly commercial space. Everybody understood NASA, and we all got that. But commercial space, and there were a number of entrepreneurs who were trying to make things happen. And in 2001, I would never forget walking through the doors of our office was a young gentleman who had just sold a stake in PayPal, a major stake in PayPal. His name was Elon Musk. And I remember the first time he walked through the door, and he had a grand plan to build a company called SpaceX. And he was an engineer. He was not an engineer. He had a different educational background, but he taught himself how to build rockets. And now, several years later, here we are. There's other companies out there like Blue Origin, United Launch Alliance, and Virgin Galactic that are really advancing U.S. commercial space transportation to heights that we couldn't have imagined years ago. We had hoped for it, but we couldn't have imagined it. I think the future is pretty bright. This year alone, for the last several years, we've broken records in terms of the number of operations that we've seen, in terms of launches and re-entries in the United States. This year is another record-breaking year. We're going to see about 63. We've seen about 63 launch operations this year so far. Fiscal year, I'm talking about calendar year, if you will. Since January, we've seen about 47 with some more to go. But the records continue to drop in terms of operations that we're seeing, and for the foreseeable future, we expect it to be the case. We're also seeing, a great interest in commercial human space flight, where private citizens like you and me, Nicole, who can get on board a rocket if we have about $250,000 right now to fly to space. And so I think with those opportunities, particularly when the price of going to space for private citizens comes down, we'll see even greater interest in it. But you start to see it on the TV more. You see it on commercials, and you see it in advertisements. And space is becoming a bigger part of our everyday way of living in this country and other places. And so I expect it to continue to grow. And as it grows, it can only be successful if we have a strong foundation when it comes to science, technology, engineering, and math. So those two things are intertwined. You can't have one without the other. And so we will need to continue to invest in making sure that we have the next generation comes up in the U.S. that is strong in those skills and have those capabilities that can continue to help push space transportation forward. But I only expect it to get better as we go along.
Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned space flight. I mean, as a researcher, it's one of those things where it's not really an obtainable thing for me to have that $250,000 just laying around for a trip into space. So I'm already trying to figure out what kind of grants I might be able to pursue to maybe one day perhaps make that happen.
Yeah, well, I think it will happen. I think it's just a matter of time. I do believe. If you believe and buy into the goals of companies like Blue Origin, for example, Blue Origin, that name really means, well, the vision is that there will be thousands of people working in space, and the origin of those people will be from the blue marble, thus Blue Origin. And therefore, if you believe in that vision, and we do believe in that vision, that vision can only come true if the opportunities to get into space become more affordable for us all. And I think that will happen.
No, absolutely. And for some of those, and just Kelvin, just to kind of reiterate, our conferences, we've got a diverse array of backgrounds. We've got from faculty, researchers, people from industry, and then also our students. And so for those students that are in the audience, what advice would you give them if they wanted to pursue a career in space or STEM? What kind of advice would you provide them with?
Well, look, I mean, we've talked a lot about science, engineering, and math today. So if you're if you want to be an engineer, obviously you have to be pretty good in those subject areas. And so continue to maintain your studies there and continue to maintain your focus there. But listen, space is broader than just science, technology, engineering, and math. We need artists. We need planners. We need lots of different folks, lots of different disciplines. It's just not all about the technology piece. I mean, we're talking about space becoming $1 trillion enterprise, or having $1 trillion global economy for space in the near future. And that's going to take contributions from a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds. And so I would say stay focused on, your studies, stay focused on, being serious about, making, if you want to be a contributor to our society and contribute to space, continue to stay serious about that and stay focused on that, and pursue opportunities. Don't be afraid to reach out and stretch yourself. Ask questions, ask for opportunities, seek those out, and be aggressive in that. Don't be discouraged when the valleys come, because there will be valleys along the way. I mean, there's always peaks and there's always valleys. And sometimes when we face valleys, this may sound a little philosophical, but sometimes when we face valleys, we can get a little discouraged and get off our gains. But I would say, see the valleys through, because there's a peak soon to follow behind that. So I would say stay focused on what you're doing and stay strong in your studies, but don't forget the engineering, science, and math. And there's always other opportunities for other folks as well. So keep that in mind.
Fantastic. Those are some great comments, and definitely want to be respectful of your time today. I know you're very busy, but do you have any closing comments that you'd like to leave us with?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Nicole, for the opportunity again to come speak with you here. And it's a great topic. Science, technology, engineering, and math, and diversity, equity, and inclusion is very important for our future. And I think these conversations that we're having is also very important. I think after the events that happened on Memorial Day a couple of years ago with George Floyd, we've seen a really significant uptick in these conversations in different forums. And I think that's great. Sort of within the FAA, there's been a more focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion in science, technology, engineering, and math along the way. And so I think this is really great. And we're really happy that you and others are taking part in this discussion and continuing to keep these very important issues in front of us, because they're really important to our success overall. So just want to say thank you for that, and really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, and thank you for joining us. I know we've really appreciated it. It's been an engaging discussion for myself. I know I appreciate all of your comments, and just thank you so much for your time and being here with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you to those in the room still. That will conclude our discussion for today. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and I will see you in the chats.